Welcome to the IT Collab, the podcast where the realms of community and collaboration intersect to revolutionize the delivery of IT managed services. I'm your host, Brandon Barnes. Whether you are an experienced IT professional seeking to expand your skill set or a visionary business leader in search of innovative solutions, we have you covered. Our experienced guests, comprising of industry veterans and thought leaders, will offer invaluable perspectives and insights to guide you through the dynamic landscape of IT. So, let us embark on this thrilling journey together. Let's go.
Well, hey Nathan.
How's it going, man?
It's going good. So, I guess the announcement to the 13th episode of the IT Collab is that my new co-host is Nathan. I appreciate you, Nathan.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully.
all of our dozens of listeners are on the edge of their seat.
I don't even know if we're supposed to look at the camera or not. So now we're going to try and do video.
Yeah.
Right, so we're going to try and do that, and I think when you're staring at your computer, instead we're like here in a space talking. So we'll see how it goes. We do have a better camera from our first one, right?
Yeah.
So we had a little janky Microsoft one, so we got a better camera. Are you guys? She's
We got
just doing that. You guys kind of or something like that.
Yeah,
So
perfect.
even in there. So this is our beginning, right?
Yeah, man. I'm
Something
excited.
new. I like it.
Yeah,
It's be fun.
It should be fun. I mean, it'll just be like inviting people into the lunches we've been having for years, just talking about all the nerdy things in our industry.
I get to play dumb. It's fun. It's okay. So moving forward, first episode, just kind of going off the cuff, and we're just kind of saying Microsoft news,
Yeah.
right? So we're going to try and do more consistent episodes, pushing out from now on. We're going to start bringing in more people to talk to. We're going to try and actually have fun and not nerd out too much, but try and add some value, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of people want to hear the nerding out too, because it's interesting stuff too. There's a fine line there, I think.
Did you get any feedback on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think people enjoy, like, in some of the other contexts I'm in, people enjoy just getting to be around people who know stuff and they want to learn, you know? I mean, sometimes that's what you're looking for. That's like, I listen to a couple space podcasts because I'm just a space nerd. And it's like just really fun. Listen to somebody go off on like orbital mechanics.
You listen to that?
Oh yeah, it's just fascinating to me. So yeah, sometimes you want
Space
to go-
podcast.
Oh yeah,
Seriously?
Everyday Astronaut has a good one. There's a few other good ones, but it's just really interesting to learn what's happening.
Okay, so my pleasure is like murder mystery or what's like unsolved murders.
Okay.
You know, like Innocence Project. You know, things that like I like to hear the whole story, and these people like investigate.
Oh yeah.
To the like years.
Yeah.
Right. And it's almost like, do I believe them? Do I not? But like everything they say is, I verified this and I verified that. Go to my website, verify the links. You can see that. And I'm like, they did a better job than like investigators.
Right.
You know. So that's my guilty pleasure, I can say. Or I listen to the Broncos podcast.
Oh, see, I can't hate on that. I'm similar. I'll listen to sports radio stuff anytime. That's
And
mine.
have you noticed that all radio stations are switching to podcast?
Yeah, because those we all used to listen to the car, right, on our commutes, and everyone's working from home, so they're losing that grip. But people still want to listen.
Yeah, and I don't have time to sit there and go, oh my god, then it's the 4:00 show.
Yeah,
And
or when like a coach is on, oh, they got Jared Bednar on from the Ops. So I'm gonna go listen to that. I'm gonna listen to his interview. He's
they didn't have one there?
He's on the Fan like once a week. But if you're not listening during that time, you miss it. So you go check it out.
I'm a big Nuggets fan, but I tend to lean towards the Broncos more just because of all this whole Bo Nick stuff, and you know.
Yeah,
But we're in Denver, so we can expect.
that was one of the things I lost in COVID. Was that drive home from work, turn on sports radio and unplug my brain for 20 minutes and then get home and be present. That's been a big change when you stand up from your desk and you're in one room and walk into the other. And
Isn't that kind of like, I find myself sometimes, and I remember driving 30 minutes across town. Granted, from my neighborhood, you could actually see the building across the street, but it used to take 30 minutes on a good day, 25 minutes on a good day to get all the way out here from Littleton, right? Or by the mountains.
Yeah.
And then on a bad day, it's like an hour.
Right.
But I remember if I was listening to a book or a podcast, I didn't care.
Yeah.
But if I'm sitting to listen to music or something, I'd probably be a little more impatient, right? So you see the value.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so we're going to talk about Microsoft stuff today, right? Microsoft news.
Yes, that's a lot of what both of us do. So it's
We're going to try and get into a cycle, right? Like news, what's upcoming. We're going to have some, interview more people and try and kind of get into a cycle of business, right?
Yeah, try to figure out what's interesting to people. Maybe throw some security news on there, kind of just the stuff we're seeing and we find interesting, and just throw it out there.
I like it.
Yeah.
What's going on in Microsoft land?
I think the big change that's impacting a lot of us is Microsoft made a big change on Teams licensing. Did you hear about this?
I did actually. Obviously, all the memos from the telecom people. We got obviously from Microsoft. If you actually pay attention to the mass amount of emails they send out, from my understanding, is there was a big class action suit. I don't know if it was EDU or was it Europe again?
Yeah, it was Europe Economic Area, EUA or something like that. Yeah.
Which happened last. I remember they did that back when Windows Explorer, they had to separate Windows Explorer out of the operating system from Windows at one point.
Right.
So this is just another rendition of packaging everything like a monopoly of services, right? Essentially is what I'm getting out of this. So now we have to unpack how do we bundle and license Teams with a Microsoft E5, right? Or because it was included in there, or how do we, is it included in everything? Obviously that's what I'm going with. And now, just a caveat, from what I understand, everyone that currently has it is grandfathered in.
Correct. Your current subscriptions aren't changing. Right. If you've got E5 or E3, it's not changing. You can add, remove, you can continue that. It's new subscriptions,
right?
Which for those of us who are in the reseller space, that could become interesting, because if a customer moves from buying CSP from you and now they're buying CSP from me, is that a new subscription? My guess is it is. And so it will create some wrinkles during some of those transitions. But yeah, like you said, Europe is bringing antitrust lawsuits against Microsoft.
No way.
I know. Well, I mean, it's, Salesforce is big in Europe, and they bought Slack. And so Slack's like, hey, man, we can't compete. It's bundled into everything. Teams is required to use half of Microsoft's Office 365 stack. And so that's where that's coming from. And I think there's a lot of antitrust energy, because AI is driving a lot of antitrust concerns, because it's owned by a couple big companies, right? And it's changing our world. So I think you're going to see more antitrust stuff next few years. But Microsoft said, hey, let's get ahead of this. Let's decouple Teams. Oh, and by the way, let's make it more expensive. Because have you looked at the numbers on what it looks like?
I haven't seen it.
So you can now if you go buy a new subscription of E3 or E5, it's like 10% cheaper.
That's it?
But
it was around like 57.
57, now it's like 52 or something. But then, or like, but no, it's 55 or something.
When we say Teams, so obviously for those people that don't know Teams, right? Teams, just in case you haven't been in the business world or living under a rock, the truth of Teams is a collaborative. It's a phone. It's everything from chatting, messaging, in the workplace, meetings. Now you have Copilot in there. Like dedicated, you're doing all your meetings. You can tie it into SharePoint because it's sharing all the documents. It's going back and forth. It's kind of this big collaborative space, and it's a phone system on top of that.
Yes, all those are things you can use it for.
So tell me, like, is Teams as a whole service, like it's completely separate all the way around, or just a phone system, or all of it?
No, I think all of it. And I'm curious what it would look like you probably can't schedule a meeting with a conference in it now, unless you have Zoom or you have Slack. So those people are going this way, and we have customers like that. I have a customer that they're on Microsoft.
Right.
They've got Slack and Zoom, and it's hard to pull out of those. And they're like, well, maybe they like it. They're like, oh, I can buy it without that because I'm already paying for that. But it's so integrated in so many things. I'm curious what all the things that break when you don't have a Teams license looks like.
Well, especially for us being Microsoft partners, right? We use Teams.
That's all we do.
Obviously, I see a lot of people, even today, I'm on some Zoom meetings and I'm on some stuff. But
it's the exception. It's
not
the rule.
Yeah, exactly.
So the licensing, so your E3 is what, $32 now, something like that?
Geez, I thought, are you sure? I thought it was 36.
And maybe it is 36. It's 36.
And Microsoft 60 about right. E3 versus an E3. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you need help with licensing, we could probably do 5 episodes on that.
We could. And actually, it would be worthwhile talking about. I think like business premium is a SKU that nobody understands fully. And like, if you're under 300 users,
Oh my God.
you should be selling. That should be what you buy, not E3.
It's even with the business premiums, right? Now this is going to be interesting because Teams is outside of this because this is like, it's like the little engine that could, which you're 100% right. It still has like a little bit of everything, but not the full package.
But 90% of it has everything. And if you went to go build the business premium SKU, it wouldn't be $22. It'd be $45. It's an amazing value, but we're digressing.
But Teams out of that too.
Right. So your E3 goes from 36 to like 33. So you get a little discount, 10% discount.
Okay.
But then once you bolt your Teams back on, now it's $40 or whatever the number is. I don't have the numbers. I know E5 goes from like $57.50 to $60 even with Teams. So they in effect said, oh yeah, we'll decouple Teams, but if you're a new subscription, the combo of Office 365 and Teams is now 5% more expensive. Congratulations. And so it's a price raise that they're going to slip in.
But let's reiterate this. If you currently have a license,
Correct.
And Teams is bundled into a lot of Office 365.
Microsoft 365, Office 365.
It's bundled into anyone's grandfathered in.
Correct. And the small business SKUs are not required to be separated even with new subscriptions. So business premium, business standard, business basic, you can still buy them with Teams on a new subscription. You can buy them without if that's your preference and it's slightly cheaper, but they didn't enforce the removal at the small business level. It's only at the enterprise license level that Teams is not included by default.
That's interesting.
Yes. I think they didn't want to deal with the disruption of small business having to do multiple SKUs, and it probably solved some of their antitrust. If it's the enterprises they're worried about that they're being forced to buy, don't make the enterprises buy Teams, small business. That's, it's splitting hairs, right?
Right. Isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. So that's why it's confusing. Like, do I lose it? Well, I don't know. Are you changing providers? Are you buying a new SKU? How about upgrades? Can I upgrade from a E3 to E5 and keep my Teams free SKU, a Teams included SKU? I don't know. That's not clear. If I transfer between partners. So there's a lot of subtle wrinkles that are going to take a few months to work out for those of us in the space.
A year to work out, right?
They might, yeah.
And at the same time, if you already have Zoom, if you already have Slack or these other things, RingCentral, I don't know, whatever the preference choice you have of meetings, which I know a lot of people, some people really love Zoom. Yeah, all that kind of stuff.
I think Zoom has a really compelling phone system. If you really want to build a phone system, I think Zoom's product is really compelling.
You think so?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. I like, one thing I don't like about Teams, I don't like it doesn't have chat or it doesn't have SMS. You can't text.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
I mean, people are like, oh, you can. Yeah.
I also have recommended on many cases that if you have a lot of external facing needs to non-business users, for example, you've got like a board meeting that has dozens of people that have 10 and they are all independent and personal email addresses and other work addresses. Zoom is so much cleaner. Teams is just brutal when it gets too broad. Sometimes it's just,
especially if you're like a heavy Google user and you're trying to log into Teams and it's like, give me a Microsoft
it's how am I logging in? Right. So there are places definitely for those. And there's a lot of businesses, like we had a business talk to us about, hey, migrate us from Slack to Teams. And you're like, that's a thing. There's third-party tools, but even when we talk to, there's a third-party tool that'll do it, but they were like, oh, this is a 4-week project because Microsoft throttles our data export. We got to transform the data. And it's...
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges.
It's also just not as... It is intuitive, but they kind of function very differently.
They do.
In my opinion. I don't think that like Slack just seems like a raining chat.
It's all a bunch of group chats is what it works out to be, right?
Right, versus... I mean, I came from Skype for Business, Link, right? Where Link was when Microsoft said, hey, we're going to buy Skype. And then they're like, let's rebrand it Link. And like, people are like, what's Link?
Right.
And then like, well, no one knows what that is. Let's call it Skype for Business.
Yes. Yes.
So I remember those days because I love the chatting. Like, and if you're in a bigger company, having that chat function is pretty awesome.
It's huge.
Right?
I'm in a 600-person org with people all over the country.
Right.
We live in chat. I mean, that's everything happens there. And
if it's not in writing, then it didn't happen, right?
Yeah, and it's so hard to like, I'm going to schedule a meeting with you. No, just me just ping you. And even if you're in a meeting, you might be able to respond really quickly. I mean, it's integral to everything we do. Teams is, I probably spend 60% of my time in a Teams meeting, right? It's just what we do. So it's huge.
Even if I have a team of guys, right, and they need help and I'm in a meeting, how do I help them? Just message me. If I'm in a meeting, I might be sitting there going, why am I on this meeting? So just message me. Yeah. Let me know what's going on. Maybe I can help like that. Okay.
So there's another wrinkle coming that will maybe ease some of the challenge here.
Okay.
This got announced a couple months ago, but it hasn't been released to partners. Microsoft's going to allow partners to transfer subscriptions between CSP providers mid-subscription.
Seriously.
I just covered a lot of data with that statement, right?
But this is more pertinent to MSPs.
Yes, people who are reselling Office. So,
or people that are reselling Office products.
Yes.
If I say, because maybe, so if you are a technical person or someone that's
business owner,
even a bit, I don't know about business owner, but maybe because I don't think any of our customers would even understand it. But Microsoft forced their hand to resell licensing at some point.
Right.
They kind of they didn't want to deal with it.
They didn't want to deal with the support. They want us to be first tier of support.
Right. So they said, well, we'll just give them, make them do it.
And so a lot of us make a lot of our, it's a good source of revenue for us. We don't mind it. It makes customers a little stickier.
It does. I've seen some shiesty stuff though.
Sure. There's also
I know for a fact, or MSRP period, just we'll sell it for whatever that Microsoft sells it for. No more or less. It's not our business model to sit there and try and upsell anything.
Yeah.
But some of these licensing people are brutal. Even just other MSPs are okay, we'll let you up here. We'll let you up here. And they'll start raising prices up and doing that. So just be careful.
Well, I've seen the opposite. I've had one of my customers get a licensing provider come to them and say, I'll sell it to you for 20% below MSRP.
Yeah.
Which is a direct provider is all the margin. Microsoft doesn't get anybody more than 20 points. They sell it at cost and we're like, well, we'll discount it. I can't go that low. That's lower than my cost. I'm an indirect reseller, so I'm not getting 20 points on it.
Well, then you have to support it, right?
We do. So
because then what people don't see is that you have to make sure that it's set up correctly. And it's kind of like when I think the benefit of that was when our customers come to us, we can advise them and say, hey, this licensing is maddening. We can help you kind of organize it and tweak this and do this and do this. But also know what the heck you're buying.
Right.
For goodness sakes. They're like, oh, we'll just go with the cheapest option. And then they come to us and they're like,
nothing works.
I had a comment the other day, and they're mad at us they got mad because they didn't have security. They said we're just selling them a bigger license. Thinking we want more money. It's truthfully, our margins are nothing on this. Don't care. But you want security, you kind of have to buy the license to get the security that you're asking for. And then they're, venting about that. And I was like, seriously? Come on.
It is confusing, all the layers, all the licenses. And somebody asked me to explain the difference between E3 and E5 today. I was like, how much time do you have? Let's go to my spreadsheet.
Well, truthfully, I could probably break down the E3 to E5 as you get some Power BI. You get the
phone system, and we get a bunch of advanced security.
Yeah, calling plan and some other stuff. And all the security E5, which is, the deep Azure identity pretty. There's a lot of, I can break that down pretty quickly though.
High-end security and compliance issue.
App security.
So back to the transfer.
Sorry.
So, no, you're good.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. So I'm a customer. I'm buying licenses from you guys.
Right.
And I decided I want to use our guys for support, and my contract is up for my support agreement. And I go, hey, I'm switching providers on June 1st. But my Microsoft is gotten customers into this annual commit. Well, most of your licenses come up for renewal in January. So we have a disjointed date. I have my MSP contract's a June date, and my NCE date is in January. Right. So we're all stuck with this where currently they say, hey, I'm going to the other provider. It's great, but you still have to pay me for Office because we both committed to that.
Or even technically what people don't realize, we're on the hook for it.
We're on the hook for it. And so both of us are on the hook. So you need to keep paying us. They're like, but my new provider needs to manage licenses. Well, they're on my name. So you have to build this weird relationship where they have a new provider,
But they're
I'm
still
stuck
paying
with
for
the
licensing
licenses.
until,
And I think there's some providers like, oh, I won't keep every penny. And that's always been my opinion of like, if you're ready to move on, I don't want to hold you back. And I don't need any, additional layers where I'm on the hook. Like go be free and do your next thing. And so now Microsoft is finally facilitating that where we can say it's mid-transition, but as long as the party that currently owns the subscription clicks agree, it'll move.
right.
And the new party can start reselling mid-subscription and just take over where it's at.
So this is allowing when you change it. So this, I would say it's a good and a bad thing for the MSPs then. Because
There are ups and downs.
some people that rely on it,
Yes.
right? Then that's a problem because you lose a customer, then they're not tied to you technically more, right? So now you have the ability to move to a different managed IT person or provider, and they can take them with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that becomes interesting for the Teams scenario. Okay, so I got E5s with Teams included. Now I can transfer providers and not have to build a new subscription, which may or may not require me decoupling Teams. So it's kind of full circle on the conversation of that functionality, which allegedly will launch in July or August, is going to be really big for that moment, because that could be a real challenge of like, all right, somebody's unhappy with their service provider. I've sold them on the value of our services. Like, oh, I'd like to buy my Office through you too. Great, that's what we do. Oh, but your Office is going to go up by 5%. Why? Well, because you're changing providers. Well, I don't want to pay 5% more because I'm changing providers.
Right.
This will eliminate that friction, which is it's a good thing. I think it's a win. It's a feature we've been asking for years.
I think the interesting piece to that though is if another managed service provider charges different, you'll see a cost difference, and then you'll really know that cost
Yes.
variance. Just go to Microsoft, check out the price.
Yeah, go look on the website. It's all public.
It's all right there.
Yeah, it is.
But why do people buy through managed services? Why do people buy their licensing?
That's a good question. I think most of the time it's because they don't know how to navigate it, because as we just talked about, it's complicated. Microsoft has 1,000 SKUs. And
Right.
which one do I want? And also, so they want somebody who understands it. And also, usually they're not dealing with it. It's their service providers the one assigning the licenses and managing all that. So they want
I
somebody else to do
can
it.
attest that Microsoft licensing is a different language.
Yes.
I think I speak it very well. I've learned the language, how to manage it. Not only that, we haven't even broached the Azure subscription, right? So I totally understand why you hire us, because we can put you in the best possible solution, and we know your dates are coming up, because Microsoft's putting a lot of different things around this. Make sure you hire a good one, because if you know this is like, we know these things in and out. We've had to live and breathe subscriptions for the last 10 years.
Yes.
And they've changed from like E2, A2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have this chart that's this big with like all the different things on it that say, why would you buy an F3 versus this? Well, a Fieldworker only has no labs, and he only had this. Like, oh my God.
Yes. Yeah.
That's why.
And then, of course, we all suffered through NCE, a very painful period for many of us, where it's still a bad word in many
Is it
conferences.
still, so NCE stands for New Commerce Experience, right?
Yes.
So is it still new?
That's a good question.
It's like 2 years, right?
It's at least 2 years. It's over 2 years. Yeah, right?
That was very painful.
Yes. Now they're bringing that fun and experience to nonprofit education and government SKUs.
Oh, they're finally doing that?
That'll happen this year. So we get to go through round 3 of that, or whatever round this is. So
What could you, for anyone that doesn't know what NCE is, can you explain what that is?
Microsoft refactored how they're selling licenses to people, but the majority of it is focused on the fact that they want to get people under 12-month commits, or you pay a premium. It's whatever the MSRP you see is dependent on you committing to 12 months of that. And if you don't commit for 12 months, it's 20% premium per month.
I think the way they spun it, originally Microsoft spun it to us, Microsoft professionals certified like us that used to go, we play in the Microsoft world.
Yeah.
Is they spun it the way I heard it, the way I thought it was spun to us is the reason you would come to us is that you can switch your licensing up and down at any time if you're with a provider, but not with not on your own.
Yes.
It was completely different.
Yes.
they came to us and they're like, well, essentially, we're going to force everyone into this new NCE contracts annual, through you guys. You have to enforce it. Oh, by the way, managed service provider, i.e. us, right? You have to put the bill.
Yes.
So if some company says, oops, we're going bankrupt, bye, who gets left for that annual contract?
We do.
Us guys.
No question.
So another reason why you'd probably go with someone like us is, it is what it is.
Yes. In the end, Microsoft's a publicly traded company.
Yeah.
And it really came down to their stock valuation. Because all that committed revenue
right.
can be put in reporting. Hey, here's all the revenue that's committed that we have.
And you can do a multi-year commitment, right?
You can.
I remember doing this. It was like a 3-year.
There is a 3-year. There was some wrinkles around that. I think the idea behind the 3-year was to get people to avoid any possible future price increases. And it's going to be everywhere. But I don't know if you noticed, but it's kind of disappeared.
I haven't noticed.
I don't think I see it in the Pax8 portal, which is where we do most of our sell.
We do Arrow.
I think the 3-year kind of disappeared. I think they realized it wasn't a good deal for us or the customers.
The 3 years?
Yeah, so it's 1 year and monthly is the only option.
I think I had to go back, but I'm pretty sure I signed a couple like really big 3 years. Because they're like, we don't want this to change.
And for the larger enterprises, they're not afraid of that.
They don't care.
But most small businesses, like, I like the month to month. A maximum is 12 months. I don't know what that look like in a year. Yeah.
Well, and here's another thing. During the NCE, right? Like, I remember this year, I think it was February was the time frame into which
majority of people moved in February-ish. Yeah.
Right. So, and that was the case. That's a good time because we have it on our calendars like, hey, double check because you have like a window of like 5 days.
7 days. If you miss it.
Before or after?
After. 7 days after renewal. Yeah, it's 7 days before.
Because you can't, with that, they really locked it down, right? Because we could spin up trials. Oh, we'll turn this off, delete this, do this. And now they're like, you have to be very careful. You can't just spin up a license anymore.
You spin up a trial and all of a sudden you're stuck with a year commit on 25 seats.
Yeah. If you're not careful.
You miss the end of the trial.
So we were very diligent, I remember this year, because it's just like, okay, well, it's the season again. And so we need to make sure everyone's like, hey, you're good. Or take these down, take these up, do this, and adjust it so that we're actually getting everyone in the right seats.
And then you have to work with customers to get them to decide whether they want to do, a mix of like annual commit and monthly. Because you're like, hey, I may lose 20% of my workforce the next year, so I'll do an annual commit on 80% and month to month on 20%. But then it's just layers of complexity and conversations.
And what's funny too is the monthly is not like just a little bit higher. It's substantially
20%.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you full 20% on top of what you're paying just to go monthly.
Must be nice to be one of the top 3 or 4 most valuable companies in the world. They're good at making money. They know how to do it. And we're all beholden to them because we love their products. I mean, it's what we do.
So it's all about the subscribe mode.
Yes. So let's talk about another big spinning project. We might be changing the subject. April 1st, Microsoft Security Copilot went live.
Security Copilot.
Security Copilot. So Microsoft has a dozen Copilot.
Nathan, fill me in on what Security Copilot is.
So Security Copilot is, think of it as ChatGPT for your security analysts in relation to your enterprise. So they can go to it and say, tell me more about this incident. And it'll go look at the incident in the Defender portal and it'll give you data.
Okay. In the portal.
So it pulls in all your Defender data, all your Sentinel data, all that. I mean, you know how rich the Defender portal is when you have a fully configured tenant. It's just incredible.
If anyone even fathoms what it's like to go through all the logs and check the events, it could take days.
It's ridiculous.
It could take to see where, and I'm talking verbatim, like firsthand, of going through logs, checking through stuff. Like, when did they log in here? Did they have a failed attempt here? Did they do this? Did they do like you're trying to go through all the different things? Where did they go through? Oh, they created this user. When there's a big security breach, it's huge.
It's huge.
Oh my God.
It also can do some recommendations, some best practice kind of stuff.
Security Copilot.
So
the Copilot subscription, which if you don't know, check out our last episode.
Microsoft 365 Copilot subscription.
Copilot subscription is $360 a year.
Correct.
Prepaid.
Correct.
Prepaid per user, no monthly. And so per user. And I'll be honest, it's worth it. If you do a lot of meetings, you do a lot of stuff, you need help editing, document, I love it. It's in everything, but maybe they have antitrust on that, but they're separate. So we're good. So security, how much is Security Copilot? And does it include everyone, or does everyone have to have it? Tell me more.
So the way it's priced is you pay for the amount of queries you run into it.
Oh.
And it works out to about $36,000 a year to have access to the tool.
$36,000 a year.
Yeah, so it is definitely for enterprises with in-house security analysts where you go, I'm paying a couple guys $150,000, $200K a year to be top flight security analysts for my enterprise. Well, I think they're trying to augment them and say, hey, here's a tool that makes them more efficient. If you've got $300,000 worth of security analysts, what's $3,000 a month for a tool that makes them that much more efficient and smart and teaches them things? It's an easy sell. But for those of us in the small, medium business space, we're not going to sell much of it. But it's still an incredible product. And it's very interesting to see.
The interesting piece, I have a question for you. And this is going to be a future episode.
Okay.
I have a lot of younger people come to me, apprentices, whatever you want to call them, they come in the door and they're like, I want to be an IT security professional. What is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. How do you get there?
We'll talk about that. Anyway, so this tool, Security Copilot, is actually, so obviously, unless you're an enterprise, it's really not like, is it per query?
So the way it works is they charge you
How
per
many
query,
queries is that?
but they have a minimum number of queries for the product. So if they're going to wire you up, you're committing to a certain amount of queries. But if you hammer it, they're going to charge you for more.
So in a couple of years, they'll have the small business version.
They might be able to scope a piece of it. It's interesting how they, like Azure Copilot, it's just this little tool that gives you recommendations in Azure, right?
So they're tying all the portals together, checking all the logs, who signed in here, who did this.
Yeah. So
that is huge. I mean, it's even for smaller businesses. Like, if there's a problem like that, that still would be
amazing, wouldn't it? Just to say, go tell me what's going on. Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see how much they can commoditize that down. As they get better silicone. I mean, all Google, Microsoft, Amazon, they're all starting to build their own custom. They've been building their own custom server chassis for years. I mean, everything in an Azure server chassis is in an Azure data center is all custom to Microsoft. They built it. Some of the components are off-the-shelf components, but it's custom servers.
Really?
Oh yeah, they've got a whole architecture because they're worried about heating and cooling is a giant expense for them. Energy use is a giant expense. So they strip down. This is no Dell server. This is not your nice Dell server with a bunch of replaceable parts. This is a bare bones, scalable server architecture. And there's articles online where you can read about how they build them. All of those companies are now investing their own AI technology where they go, can we make our own chips that do AI? Pop it in. So we're not beholden to NVIDIA for their expensive video cards.
Because NVIDIA, I mean, obviously their stock has skyrocketed because they own a lot of that technology. Or
they rode the crypto wave, and right as that went down, AI picked them up and kept them going.
It's crazy.
So, but that's why they're all inventing their own AI
chips
because they're like, we can't. Not only can we not afford to pay NVIDIA for all these chips, but it's not scaling. It's just NVIDIA can't build them fast enough, and I think everybody's trying to figure out if they can find a way more efficient way to do it. So,
what's so different about why couldn't they go to Intel chips versus NVIDIA?
Well, Intel is actually making one, but the way the processors are wired, it's not a CPU, it's a GPU, and the kind of math they do is very different. And so the GPU math is what the AI is using, not a CPU math.
So just FYI, I am the guy that tries to break it down for us. For the novice, right?
Well, graphics, as well as I understand it.
Instead of a central processing unit, graphics. So it's like a graphic. It's almost like they have all the NVIDIA is known for the graphics cards, right? And so versus Intel is not known for the graphics card. They're known for their central processing unit, the CPU. And so a lot of this AI is taking the GPU.
And I think the CPUs are better at like taking lots of different inputs and just doing quick operations, whereas the GPUs do giant piles of math quickly.
Right.
And so I think it's just a different way that they're, that's when zeros are running through there.
That's a massive. Well done, NVIDIA. Well done.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
That's great.
Incredible.
Good for you.
Yeah. All right. One more piece of Microsoft news for you.
Tell me.
Have you seen Microsoft Places?
Places.
Like trading places.
No.
It's actually kind of cool. The idea behind it is there's now this push in this industry, which I'm actually in favor of. I actually like, and that push is to get people back in the office. Right? Everybody's working from home, and companies are struggling with this morale and this culture of like, yeah, I'm on a conference call with that person every day, but I'm not connected to them. Just getting person to person, there's a different thing that happens when we're in person rather than over a screen.
Is this part of the Teams license?
No, this is kind of a bolt-on to, I think it's a free feature on top. The idea is you can go into Outlook and say, I'm in the office Wednesdays and Fridays, and this is the office I'm in. You get as big as saying this is the building I'm in, but you can actually upload floor plans and say hot desks and offices can be claimed in that tool. And you can say, I'm in office 107B on Wednesdays and 107A on Fridays. And as the teams start to fill that in, this Places is going to start to recommend and say, hey, by the way, 5 people from your team are going to be in the office this week. Here's the offices they're at. Do you want to grab a hot desk next to them? You go reserve yourself a hot desk. And you can be intentional about being in the office the same day as your coworkers.
And that's pretty, because honestly, I think what I enjoy is the hybrid.
I do too.
Right? Like, I mean, truthfully, I work from home every Monday, and it's kind of nice because I do live 30 minutes away, but it's also just, it gives me some time to get things done. And so the people, because you do, like, you get the drive-bys and the walk-bys, and I enjoy the people, and I enjoy the coaching and mentoring and doing all the things, but I don't have time sometimes to get caught up. Yeah. And so I could see that's pretty awesome.
I'm a little more hybrid than you, so I'm probably 3 days at home, 2 days at the office.
Really?
But you'll hear people who are like, I'll talk to people like, oh, I know you're going to be in the office. Why do you communicate that? You say, hey, everybody, I'm going to be in the office Tuesday. Like, that message is not welcome necessarily. And if everybody's posting that, but this will provide some context where you'll be able to say, hey, if you think about going to the office this week, 5 of your coworkers on your team will be in on this day. So it helps you plan which day. And if you're in a more corporate scope structure, say, not only do I know which day I'm going in, but I've already reserved my hot desk.
Right.
Because I think that hot desking is a lot of what we're going to see. And I think you're seeing that with companies where they're like, we have 300 employees in town, but we have seating for 50. We want the teams to cycle through, right? Of, hey, have your team meet on this day, and on that day, this team meets. And so that hot desk preserving is a lot of what you're seeing.
I could see that. I mean, honestly, that was something we considered too in the future. Instead of just having a desk available for people when they want to show up to the office, but that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, pretty.
So it's almost like reserving conference rooms.
Very similar.
Reserve a desk.
Reserve a desk. Tell people when you're going to be in and reserve a desk.
I like it.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So.
Pretty good. Yeah. You got anything else for me today? Microsoft news, Nathan.
I think that'll do it. I'm sure there's some other things we could dig up, but
what he played. Just so everyone knows, you play with Microsoft guys, the Microsofties.
I do. I have quite a few friends over there. I've had the privilege of being on some advisory boards and just know a lot of people over there. And there's a lot of really good people on some of those teams. And
so he's
fun to hang out with.
He has NDAs. He won't tell us about all of things, but he will tell us as much as he can and kind of fill everyone in. And I'll ask dumb questions.
Well, hopefully we can get some of those Microsofties on in the next couple of weeks. We'll get some conversations about Lighthouse and Defender and just get some people on. There's just lots of cool stuff going on over there. And they want to talk about it.
I wish they'd open their office back. I talked to one of the other Microsoft reps recently, and because we met doing the Azure Users Group in Denver, and correlate or co-author, co-presenting in that realm. And I talked to them. They were trying to bring something back like that, and I realized they're not even opening the office back up. It'd just be a webinar. I'm like, I'll just do this thing.
there actually are a few users group meeting at the Denver office.
They still? He told me it wasn't even open.
Well, I've been to a couple there, so that you can still get it. I think you might have to get a sponsor maybe to get it. And
but he's. I mean, this guy was. I've heard his name. He was based out of New Mexico, so I don't know. He told me that the Denver office wasn't open. So
interesting. Well, I'll tell you that if you ever go to Redmond,
Virginia.
Redmond, Washington, where Microsoft owns half of the city there. They embarked on a giant construction project right before COVID because they just needed more space. They were exploding. And so they tore down a bunch of their original buildings, and then they started building a bunch of really big new office buildings. And then COVID hit. and they still, a lot of those offices are sitting empty. And so they're about to open a bunch of new buildings, and like 3 or 4 of these giant buildings may never be used. They're just going to be shells, because by the time they got ready to fill out the inside of them, they realized they just didn't need the space because nobody's working at the office anymore. And so they built these buildings that are not going to use them because they've got tens of thousands of offices in Redmond, and they have
Microsoft,
thousands of people coming in, and that's it.
I think Microsoft realized they can function with a remote workforce.
Yeah, it just
doesn't.
But I think it's going to be interesting to watch. You're seeing lots of companies like Dell. I don't know, saw Dell starting to like watch key cards and see when people are coming in and make it part of their reviews.
Right.
They're really trying to get people back in the office. I think there's going to be a battle.
I think it is. I think it is, because you want to have some accountability. You want to show the people know what they're doing, or that how do you know when they're working at home they're actually working, or
Lots of layers there.
I think that's another thing, a whole other layer where it's all about like the new way of trying to track progress for people is like, how do you know they're getting their job done? And just tracking, not their time or their punching cards, but tracking what they, their actual progress,
Engagement,
what they're getting done, value. Right.
Building culture, right? There's so much of that culture that say we get in a room and like, no, that's how we approach this problem. We're customer first. Or like whatever those things are, that's harder to do over a Teams meeting when people are reading email. I mean, I struggle with it on Teams meetings. There are meetings I'm like, I have to close. I gotta focus. That's like before you know it, a Teams message comes in and you're over here, and then you're like, wait, I have no idea what just got said. That happens a couple times a week, and it's embarrassing.
Comcast is full remote too, from what I understand.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Like what?
Office space is expensive.
You're saving money, right? Yeah. I mean, you're also heating. The tenant has to pay for that, but yeah, it can be expensive.
Yeah.
All right. Till next time.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be soon, right? But we tell people, like, don't forget to subscribe, like, do all the things or whatever if we're on YouTube, but just listen to the podcast.
Yeah. Share a link on social media if you enjoy something we do.
All right. Have a good one. See you next time.